Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our online Srimad Bhagavatam reading retreat lab. So we are going to start today the first canto, second chapter. So let's then get started. And I have the hard copy with me. And also, if you want a copy of it, you can always contact me or any of the nearest ISKCON centers. And for people who do not have the hard copy, they can also read it from the online database, which I'll be just going to share with all of you. So this is the database website, and you can go to the canto number one creation. From this, we have completed the last time the first chapter number one, that is the questions by the sages. So today we are going to start with the chapter number two, that is divinity and divine service. So let's then get started. So in this chapter, we will study chapter number two is talks about divinity and divine service. We will start with the text number one. So as usual, we will not be going to read here in this the sloka in details. Only we will read the translation and the purport. So in another sessions, specifically for sloka, we'll be having another lab sessions like sloka recitation lab. So in that, we will try to only recite the particular slokas and we'll try to understand each and every word meaning and detail about it. But in these sessions, mostly we will be reading the each and every slokas. They are word meaning and only the translation and purport only. We'll not be reciting the entire slokas here. So the that is a canto number one, verse number chapter number 2, verse number 1, SB 1.2.1, and this is just page number 79 in the canto number 1 in the English copy. So let's then get started. Translation. Ugra Sharva, Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami is also known as Ugra Sharva, the son of Romaharsana, being fully satisfied by the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. Purport. The sages of Naimisharanya asked Sutta Goswami 6 questions, and so he is answering them one by one. SB 1.2.2 Translation. Srila Sutta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage, Sukadev Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyasa, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred fate or the ceremonies observed by the higher castes. His father, Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son, indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father.' Purport. The institution of Varna and Ashrama prescribes many regulative duties be observed by its followers. Such duties enjoin that a candidate willing to study the Vedas must approach a bona fide spiritual master and request acceptance as his disciple. The sacred trade is a sign of those who are competent to study the Vedas from the Acharya or the bona fide spiritual master. Sri Sukadev Goswami didn't undergo such purificatory ceremonies because he was a liberated soul from his very birth. Generally, a man is born as an ordinary being, and by the purificatory process, he is born for the second time. When he sees a new light and seeks direction for spiritual progress, he approaches a spiritual master for instruction in the Vedas. The spiritual master accepts only the sincere inquirer as his disciple, and he gives him the sacred trade. In this way, man becomes twice born, or a visa. After qualifying as Dvisa, one may study the Vedas, and after becoming well versed in the Vedas, one becomes a Vipra. A Vipra, or a qualified Brahmana, thus realizes this absolute and makes further progress in spiritual life until he reaches the Vaishnava stage. The Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate status of a Brahmana. A progressive Brahmana must necessarily become a Vaishnava, or a Vaishnava is a self realized learned Brahmana. Srila Sukadev Goswami was a Vaishnava from the beginning, therefore, there was no need for him to undergo all the processes of the Varnashrama institution. Ultimately, the aim of Varnashrama Dharma is to turn a crude man into a pure devotee of the law, or a Vaishnava. Anyone, therefore, who becomes a Vaishnava accepted by the first class Vaishnava or Uttama Adhikari Vaishnava is already considered a Brahmana, regardless of his birth or past deeds. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted this principle and recognized Srila Haridas Thakur as the Acharya of the Holy Name, although Thakur Haridas appeared in the Mohammedan family. In conclusion, Srila Sukadev Goswami was born a Vaishnava and therefore Brahmanism was included in him. He didn't have to undergo any ceremonies. Any low-born person, be he a Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Pulaksha, Avira, Sumbha, Yavana, Khas, or even lower, can deliver to the highest transcendental position by the mercy of Vaishnavas. Srila Sukadev Goswami was the spiritual master of Sri Sutta Goswami, who therefore offers his respectful obeisances unto Srila Sukadeva Goswami before he begins his answers to the questions of the sages at Namisharanya. Text number 3, we'll go to the next verse. SB 1.2.3 translation. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Sukha, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. Purport. In this prayer, Srila Sruta Goswami practically summarizes the complete introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural supplementary commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. The Vedanta Sutras or the Brahma Sutras were compiled by Vyasadeva with a view of presenting just to the cream of Vedic knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on this cream. Sorry. Srila Sukadev Goswami was a thoroughly realized master on the Vedanta Sutra, and consequently, he also personally realized the commentary, Srimad Bhagavatam. And just to show his boundless mercy upon the bewildered materialistic man who wanted to cross completely over any science, he recited for the first time this confidential knowledge. There's no point in arguing that a materialistic man can be happy. No materialistic creature, be he the great Brahma or an insignificant ant, can be happy. Everyone tries to make a permanent plan for happiness, but everyone is baffled by the laws of natural nature. Therefore, the materialistic world is called the darkest region of God's creation. Yet, the unhappy materialists can get out of it simply by desiring to get out. Unfortunately, they are so foolish that they do not want to escape. Therefore, they are compared to the camel who relishes thorny twigs because he likes the taste of the twigs mixed with blood. He doesn't realize that it is his own blood and that his tongue is being cut by the thorns. Similarly, the materialist, his own blood is as sweet as honey, and although he is always harassed by his own material creations, he doesn't wish to escape. Such materialists are called karmis. One of hundreds of thousands of karmis, only a few may feel tired of material engagement and desire to get out of labyrinth. Such intelligent persons are called jnanis. The Vedanta Sutra is directed to such jnanis. But Srila Vyasadeva, being the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, could foresee the misuse of the Vedanta Sutra by unscrupulous men and therefore he personally supplemented the Vedanta Sutra with the Bhagavata Purana. It is clearly said that this Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Brahma Sutras. Srila Vyasadeva also instructed the Bhagavatam to his son Srila Sukadeva Goswami, who was already at the liberated stage of transcendence. Srila Sukadeva realized it personally and then explained it. By the mercy of Srila Sukadeva, the Bhagavata Vedanta Sutra is available for all those sincere souls who want to get out of material existence. Srimad Bhagavatam is the one unrivaled commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Sripada Sankaracharya intentionally didn't touch it because he knew that the natural commentary would be difficult for him to surpass. He wrote his Sarirak Bhashya and his so-called followers deprecated the Bhagavatam as some new presentation. One should not misled by such propaganda directed against the Bhagavatam by the Mayavada school. From this introductory sloka, the beginning student should know that Srimad Bhagavatam is the only transcendental literature meant for those who are Paramahansas and completely freed from the material disease called malice. The Mayavadis are envious of the personality of Godhead despite Sripad Sankaracharya's admission that Narayan, the personality of Godhead, is above the material creation. The envious Mayavadi cannot have access to the Bhagavatam, but those who are really anxious to get out of this material existence may take shelter of this Bhagavatam because it is uttered by the liberated Srila Sukadeva Goswami. It is a transcendental torchlight by which one can see perfectly the transcendental absolute truth realized as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Now we'll move to the next verse. Okay, verse number 4, SD 1.2.4. Translations. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectable obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Purport. All the Vedic literatures and the Puranas are meant for conquering the darkest region of material existence. The living being is in the state of forgetfulness of his relation with God due to his being overly attracted to material sense gratifications from time immemorial. His struggle for existence in the material world is perpetual, and this is not possible for him to get out of it by making plans. If he at all wants to conquer this perpetual struggle for existence, he must re-establish his eternal relations with God. And one who wants to adopt such remedial measures must take shelter of the literature such as the Vedas and the Puranas. Police people say that the Puranas have no connection with the Vedas. However, the Puranas are supplementary explanations of the Vedas intended for different types of men. All men are not equal. They are men who are conducted by the mode of goodness, others who are mode of the passion, and others who are under the mode of ignorance. The Puranas are so divided that any class of men can take advantage of them and gradually regain their lost position and get out of the hard struggle for existence. Sri Rasuta Goswami shows the way of chanting the Puranas. This may be followed by persons who aspire to be preachers of the Vedic literatures and the Puranas. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana, and it is especially meant for them who desire to get but of the material entanglement permanently. So now we will move to the next verse. SB 1.2.5 translation. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. Purport. Since it has been stated herein before that in the Bhagavatam the absolute truth is to be known, the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya are proper and just because they pertain to Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth. In Bhagavad Gita 15.15, the personality of Godhead says that in all the Vedas there is nothing but the odds for searching after him, Lord Krishna. Thus, the questions that pertain to Krishna are the sum and substance of all the Vedic inquiries. The whole world is full of questions and answers. The birds, beasts, and men are all busy in matter of perpetual questions and answers. In the morning, the birds in the nest become busy with questions and answer, and in the evening also the same birds come back and again become busy with questions and answers. The human being, unless he is fast asleep at night, is busy with questions and answers. The businessmen in the market are busy with questions and answers, and so also the lawyers in the court and the students in the schools and colleges. The legislators in the parliament are also busy with questions and answers. And the politicians and the press representatives are all busy with questions and answers, although they go on making in such questions and answer for their whole lives, they are not all satisfied. Satisfaction of the soul can only be obtained by questions and answers on the subject of Krishna. Krishna is our most intimate master, friend, father, or son, and object of conjugal love. Forgetting Krishna, we have created so many objects of questions and answers, but none of them are able to give us complete satisfactions. All things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. So, if we are to have complete satisfaction, we must take to the questions and answers about Krishna. We cannot live for a moment without being questions or without giving answers because Srimad Bhagavatam deals with questions and answers that are related to Krishna. We can derive the highest satisfaction only by reading and hearing this transcendental literature. One should learn the Srimad Bhagavatam and make an all-around solution to all problems pertaining to social, political, and religious matters. Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna are the sum total of all things. Moving to the next verse, that is text number 6, catch number 1, chapter number 2, verse number 6. This is one of the most important verse. You must have heard about this a lot of times, Srila Prabhupada speaking in the lectures. Translation. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Purport. In this statement, Srila Sutta Goswami answered the first questions of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the Prabriti Marga, or the path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called Nivritti Marga, or the path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence or Brahmabhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just the futile attempt to get rid of the miseries and temporary sedition of miseries falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. 5. Devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads to leads one to external, blissful, and all cognizant life is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path renunciation or abnegation for the ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the disease condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality, that is, without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of the devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service. We have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. A living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relations with Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna is the central pivot of all living beings, and he is all attractive living entity or eternal form amongst all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has its eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is the complex whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. Is transcendental and it is transcendental. It is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and the served is most a congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as if devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional state of material existence. That will gradually give one the clue to the actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. Now we will move to the next verse. SB 1.2.7 translation. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Purport. Those who consider devotional service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna to be something like material emotional affairs may argue that in the revealed scriptures, sacrifice, charity, austerity, knowledge, mystic powers, and similar other processes of transcendental realizations are recommended. According to them, bhakti or the devotional service of the Lord is meant for those who cannot perform the high grade activities. Generally, it is said that the bhakti cult is meant for the Sudras, Vaishyas, and less intelligent human class, but that is not the actual fact. The bhakti cult is the topmost of all transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. It is sublime for the pure devotees who are serious about getting in contact with the Supreme Lord, and it is easy for the neophytes who are just on the threshold of the house of bhakti to achieve the contact of the Supreme Personality of God, Sri Krishna, is a great science and is open for all living beings, including the Sudras, Vaishyas, women, and even those lower than the low-born Sudras. So, what to speak of the high-class men, like the qualified Brahmanas and the great self-realized kings? The other high-grade activities designated as sacrifice, charity, austerity, etc., are all corollary factors following the pure and scientific bhakti cult. The principles of knowledge and detachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realizations. The whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything, material and spiritual. And the results of such perfect knowledge are that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. Becoming detached from material things doesn't mean becoming inner together, as men with more fond of knowledge think. Niskam means not undertaking activity that will produce good or bad effects. Negation doesn't mean negation of the opposite. Negation of the non-essentials doesn't mean negation of the essential. Similarly, the detachment from materials similarly, the detachment from material forms doesn't mean nullifying the positive form. The bhakti cult is meant for realization of the positive form. When the positive form is realized, the negative forms are automatically eliminated. Therefore, with the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of positive science, application positive service to the positive form, one naturally becomes detached from inferior things and he becomes attached to superior things. Similarly, the bhakti cult, being the supermost occupation of the living being, leads him out to material sense enjoyment. That is a sign of a pure devotee. He is not a fool, nor engaged in the inferior energy, nor does he have material values. This is not possible by dry reasoning. It actually happens by the grace of the Almighty. In conclusion, one who is a pure devotee has other good qualities. Ultimately, in conclusion, one who is a pure devotee has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, detachment, etc. But one who has only knowledge or detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of the Bhakti cult. Bhakti is the supermost occupations of the human being. So today we will stop here. In the next session, we will start with the verse number 8. And this chapter, we will see how many verses. Just a minute. We have around 29, I believe. Yes. So sorry, we have 34 verses in the chapter number 2. So today, out of 34, we have covered up to the verse number 7. So we will stop here. See you next in the next sessions. Hare Krishna.